Welcome back, everyone, to another Downward Day, and a site that has always been a big part of the downward spiral. You know it, you love it. Today we're talking about Twitter.com, probably the only social media site that I have to admit that I'm ashamed to use. And that's for the simple reason that, and let's not mince words here, this website is a complete embarrassment, and pretty much always has been, for as long as I've been using it. So I don't normally like to discuss Twitter outside of Twitter. I prefer to keep it in the deep, dark place in the back of my mind that's intended to be hidden from the people I actually care about and respect. I really prefer to not remind myself of that platform when I'm not using that platform. But 2 years ago, I came out with a video basically expressing everything I find to be deeply wrong with Twitter, and I've always had people asking me my opinion since then. But in the past couple of months, Twitter has gone through some major changes, or at least it's been discussed that major changes are coming. And I have a feeling that given that video and what little investment some of you may have in it, I feel like it's appropriate at this time to discuss my thoughts on what I think is happening to a platform which I already pretty much hate and have very little respect for. So what's new at the big blue brand? Well, America's favorite businessman, Elon Musk, has taken it over. He spent some absurd amount, like $50 billion or something, to become the majority shareholder on Twitter. It's been seemingly a hostile takeover that's been in the talks for months, sort of stringing the users and investors of Twitter along for about 6 months. Will he or won't he? Well, he did. He's in charge now. He took out a massive loan at high interest rates because Elon is convinced that he is going to be Twitter's savior. He is somehow going to deliver Twitter from all of the sins that this platform has enacted on its users and itself over the past decade or so. He's going to lead Twitter to the promised land as our messiah. Oh, what wishful thinking and copium that having billions of dollars ends up doing to your brain. Because speaking primarily as someone who's used Twitter rather extensively for the past 6 years, I really don't see any magical route for Twitter to be saved at all. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that it's far more likely that Twitter destroys Elon Musk rather than Elon Musk saving Twitter. This site has just been one of the greatest examples of the emperor's new clothes for any platform on the internet. Because in my general experience talking to people about Twitter, people who don't use the platform, and rightfully so, you really shouldn't, but people who don't use it tend to have an ambivalent opinion about the site. They're off in their own uncorrupted world, and they have no idea just how bad things really are on Twitter. And it's nothing new, as a lot of these fraud brands would like to make you believe. It's not new. Twitter's problems go back to as long as I've been using it. It's always been just a complete cesspool of degeneracy, rage, hatred, really just the worst aspects of humanity, all combined into this one extremely bitter nucleus on the internet. In my many years on the web, I've seen public sentiment shift against so many sites. There have always been these platforms and spaces online that have grown notorious for just the toxicity of their user base. Tumblr, 4chan, Kiwi Farms. All these sites have become widely known for being basically the big bad wolves of the internet, where the thugs and scum of the web go to congregate. And I've said this before and I'll say it again now. The users of Twitter are worse than any of these sites. I truly believe, and I will likely maintain this forever, that the average Twitter user base is significantly more toxic, more bitter, more nasty than anyone you'll find on Kiwi Farms or 4chan. I truly believe that's the case. At the very least, There's an argument to be made that the users of Twitter are by far the most damaging people for the fabric of civil society. It is a platform that encourages almost this religious fanaticism and militant warfare towards whatever petty issue you might have a problem with. It's a site which imparts on its users this idea that it is no longer enough to simply be annoyed with an issue or to simply even complain about it in a petty way. No, you have to take these marginal annoyances and turn it into the biggest problem in the history of mankind and sacrifice your time, your spirit, your energy, and your rage to do whatever is in your power to attack whoever else is standing in your way of achieving your goal. This is the culture of Twitter. You are no longer allowed to simply tolerate the problem of the day. You have to make it your mission to become a militant soldier for whatever cause you've been whipped up into suddenly arbitrarily caring about. And yes, sorry to be the bearer of bad news for all you wonderful political warriors out there, but most of these problems are completely arbitrary. They don't have any impact on your well-being and your general sense of happiness and your general sense of self. You are being used by somehow convincing yourself to care about these arbitrary issues more so than any other aspect in your life. You are doing yourself a disservice. You're being used as a pawn, as a frontline soldier to fight somebody else's battle. There will never be a point of resolution. You will always be fighting an endless tug of war versus the other side that will never see any solution whatsoever. You're entering yourself into an endless confrontation. God, man, when everyone picks a fight on Twitter, they always have to be thinking to themselves like, oh, all we have to do is defeat the bad guys and then suddenly I'll be happy. No, you won't. You will never reach that moment where the bad guys are defeated. There's always going to be a new enemy, a new problem for you to fix, and you're entering yourself into a perpetual state of discontent where you will never be satisfied, you will never be happy, and you will continue to be made miserable by putting yourself into some kind of war that is never actually going to have a resolution. And that right there is what the majority of people go to Twitter to do. To endlessly fight, complain, and argue and make themselves miserable. And turn themselves into basically a miserable human being. Just a complete shell of what a person is actually supposed to be. These people who have so few victories in their miserable lives that they treat winning an online argument as the most significant accomplishment they've ever had. And that right there is a window into a conversation that must be said over the type of personality that Twitter attracts. Because overwhelmingly, the people I see drawn to Twitter are some of the most insecure, vapid, and self-loathing individuals among any platform. It's just these extremely pathetic people who have to constantly feel validated by the people around them. And reading those words back in my head, it's a pretty accurate descriptor of the big daddy who just bought the whole damn thing. I don't think I can say that Elon Musk buying Twitter is going to be good for Twitter or good for Elon. But make no mistake about it that these two things are perfect for each other. Now, I don't think that I've ever explicitly stated my opinions on Elon Musk before, but let me change that now. So Elon Musk is a guy who I used to respect quite a bit, but someone whom I've since lost pretty much all respect for after actually having to interact with one of his products as a customer. And no, it's not a Tesla as most of you might be thinking. I'm still perfectly fine with my old reliable Toyota Corolla right here, and I have no intentions of switching to Tesla anytime soon, especially after my experience with dealing with one of Elon's other consumer products in Starlink Internet. Now, the Starlink hassle is a story in and of itself that I'm probably going to have to cover in a whole different video. But long story short, Elon's space-age internet service really doesn't come as advertised, and it's quite disappointing. And I think that Elon's underlying business model is just as predatory and anti-consumer as any other internet service provider and any other scummy corporation that he claims to be fighting against. Basically, in the process of actually interacting with one of this guy's products, my eyes have been opened to how he's no more virtuous than anyone else in the tech industry that he claims to be better than. And he's conned pretty much a whole generation of people into thinking that he's this futuristic messiah who's going to lead humanity to this technocratic utopia, when the reality of the situation is that he, like many others in his position, is just really good at marketing and not much else. By all accounts, the premium products he's selling seem to be just as mediocre as anything else on the market, but he prides himself on being this genius savant figure who is being a hero to all of mankind by providing us with these sacred fruits of his oh so exquisite labor. Let's just say at this point that I and a lot of other people have seen through the Emperor's new clothes. Elon has never been wearing a magical invisible cloak. He's just been naked this whole time. But it's not enough for him to be just yet another Silicon Valley stiff. He has a personal addiction to being loved and worshipped by an army of followers. And that right there, in my honest opinion, is why he bought Twitter. It's not a good financial decision. Twitter is pretty much worthless. I think he acquired his majority stake for like $53 a share. Twitter is not even worth 1/10 of that, intrinsically. Let's be honest here. The biggest con job in Wall Street in the last 10 years is convincing these idiotic institutional investors that Twitter is somehow worth a shit when it's not. It's still a complete mystery to me at this point how Twitter even makes revenue, how this site is not completely insolvent. The user base is not growing. It's been completely stagnant since 2015, and it's gotten to such an embarrassing point that they stopped publishing the figures for investors at just how stagnant the users are. It's been at 300 million users since 2015, and it's probably less now because as a consumer, what reason is there for you to go on Twitter? Most regular, sane people don't enjoy spending time in a place where it seems like every instrument at its disposal is designed to make you irate and to put you in a perpetual state of rage. Geez, it's a complete shocker to me why people would not want to put themselves into that situation and subject themselves to the worst aspects of humanity on a daily basis. Yes, an absolute mystery why Twitter's user base is not growing. And the fact that companies are just now starting to raise concerns over brand friendliness on Twitter is absolutely hilarious to me, as if the last 5 years of complete insane degeneracy from the average user on this platform has been completely invisible. Much like Elon's magical invisible cloak, all these dumbass venture capitalist investors have somehow ignored how Twitter has literally become an insane asylum. It is the insane asylum of the web where schizophrenic, depressed, and anxiety-riddled people go to have a complete mental breakdown on a daily basis. Now, I don't see any of these brands rushing to put up a billboard next to every insane asylum in America in real life. So why they've been doing it on Twitter this whole time is a complete mystery to me. I'd be very interested to see what return on investment that any of these companies have had by actually advertising on Twitter. Because the brands I see on Twitter, they're not new, up-and-coming brands. Brands who actually want to grow, they go to YouTube, like Raid Shadow Legends and Raycon, and they pay YouTubers like me to shill the products, and it actually contributes to the brand growing and increasing their market cap. What company has actually grown through Twitter advertising exclusively? All the ads I actually see there are pre-established brands that have already soaked up whatever market share they can and already have a dozen different streams of advertising to where whatever additional sales or conversions they can get from Twitter have to be completely insignificant. God, it's just the most baffling thing. In this past year, people have gotten bogged on investing in Netflix. They've gotten bogged in investing in Facebook. But both of those companies, they still have a much more reasonable pathway to revenue than Twitter does. It's like the most mind-boggling thing to me that companies actually spare the expense to advertise on this completely broken platform that provides its users with no value whatsoever, and that is not growing, is not culturally relevant in the slightest bit, and for the longest time has allowed literal porn and gore videos to be posted with no moderation. It's the biggest crock of shit to me how YouTubers had to lose revenue and continue to lose revenue for ticky-tacky advertisers being so concerned about brand friendliness, and yet these same companies go and advertise on Twitter for years when they've been allowing literal porn. Like, isn't that one of the first things to go on any website? Like, you're not allowed to post pornography. I know you're not allowed to do it on YouTube. Isn't porn the reason why Tumblr lost 99% of their valuation in a matter of 3 years? Because advertisers didn't want to touch it? But they don't seem to care about Twitter! Like, what the fuck? Sorry, I'm getting worked up. This is sort of the reason why I don't try to talk about Twitter. Because when you really logically look at it, it makes zero sense whatsoever. It makes our entire economic system look like it's being run by a bunch of idiots on cocaine. And you know what? It probably is, which is why I haven't bought any stocks in the past year and a half, because the whole system is falling apart now that advertisers are finally starting to realize that Twitter is completely worthless. They ignored porn and gore and like literal beheading videos for years. They didn't care at all. They kept putting advertising money into Twitter. But now that Elon is taking away the moderation tools and there's a potential for more racism to come out of Twitter, that's where they draw the line. Like, Jesus Christ, if you need any evidence that we're in a clown society, just look at the financial aspects of Twitter and how this company is even in business. And of course, now that Elon has taken it over for what appears to be primarily vanity, he's still a businessman at heart, at least, and doesn't want to completely lose his ass on purchasing this dumpster fire of a platform. So what does he start talking about doing on week 1 of the job after firing half of the company's workforce? He wants to charge $8 a month for people to actually have their opinions heard on Twitter. And hey, I've always found about 99.99% of the opinions being espoused on Twitter to be completely worthless, if not worse. I think in order to force me to willingly read whatever these blue checkmark dorks are spewing half the time, you'd have to pay me to read it. And I will admit that Elon threatening to charge for the checkmark has led to an absolute hilarious meltdown by these verified accounts, trying to claim that they drive in the traffic to Twitter and that their takes are so valuable to the fabric of society that Twitter should be paying them. No, you got it all wrong. You should be paying me financial damages to have to read the psychotic, brain-dead ramblings that you mentally ill people are spewing out onto my timeline on a daily basis. But I will admit I admire this aspect of the hostile takeover. Anything that makes the blue checkmarks whine and cry is pretty hilarious to me and okay in my book. For them to sit there and talk about being oppressed as if they haven't been the most pampered group of people on any social media site ever is just a delicious taste of irony for me. And to see these horrible excuses for people whine and bitch and threaten to leave the platform, it brings me genuine joy to see it happen. So that's the one aspect I enjoyed out of Ethan's great plan to start charging for verification, but everything else about it just seems incredibly stupid, backwards, and nonsensical. Of course, I said all I wanted to say about it in my video about Twitter verification, so if you want me to elaborate more on this in a bit more precise language, you can go check that out. But after a while, it's just like, dude, what are we doing? It's verification. Every other website has figured this out. Why is Twitter having so much problem understanding what the purpose of verification actually is? No matter who's in charge on Twitter, they always have to have some stupid reasoning for why I, as a 100,000 follower account coming from a 1 million subscriber YouTube channel where I upload a video and it gets more views than most of the crap that's being put out on television, why I can't be verified to say that I am officially me, like every other site does. There's always got to be some stupid hoops you got to go through on Twitter, and it's really pathetic to see how Elon, who's been talking about free speech this entire time, is once again just going to turn the verification system into something that's arguably even worse than it was before. Because whereas it was completely arbitrarily restricted in the old incarnation of Twitter, At least it was free. At least you didn't have to fork over your hard-earned cash to be verified, which is once again a practice that no other major social media platform performs. How hard is it to just have a signifier saying that I am who I am officially? How hard is it? Huh? How hard could it possibly be to have a little badge next to my name that says I am who I say I am? That's what verification is. That's all it is. Why overthink it? Why throw in all this rigmarole about paying $8 a month, being established, notable figure, journalist, reporter, whatever? Esports celebrity, TikToker, I've got a brand to manage me so I can get verified, but if I'm an independent creator, you're shit out of luck. Like, why? Just why? It's a very simple request. I, as a notable online figure, would like to be verified on this platform, which I use semi-frequently. But it's too much to ask. It's just too much. The genius Silicon Valley people at Twitter couldn't figure it out, and now Elon Musk, the genius, they can't figure it out. Just pay $8 a month, and anyone can be verified. And if you don't want to fork over this completely unnecessary expense that gives you no actual benefits other than preventing scammers from impersonating you, then you're shit out of luck. Thank you for using Twitter and buying Teslas and paying for Starlink. Well, I guess after all this time, it's nice to see that no matter who's in charge at Twitter, it will always be one of the worst websites on the internet, and one that I'm genuinely ashamed to call myself a user of. So I guess enjoy your new $50 million cesspool, Elon. Be careful how much you swim in it, because you just might drown.